Welcome to Cheese in Depth. I'm Michael Landis, and today we're talking with Tony Hook, Hook's Cheese Company. Today's webinar is sponsored by the dairy farmers of Wisconsin. With over 1,200 licensed cheesemakers and the only state that requires a license to make cheese, they're also the only place outside of Europe with a master cheese program. Today, I'm talking with Wisconsin cheesemaker Tony Hook, who's been making cheese as a licensed cheesemaker since 1974. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tony. Tony?
Thank you, Michael. Glad to be here. Thank you to the Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin for sponsoring this. I'm Tony Hook, Hook's Cheese Company. I own, my wife and I, Julie and I own a cheese plant in Mineral Point, Wisconsin. I've been making cheese since 1970, and I started in Barneveld, Wisconsin. I started making with a Swiss cheesemaker, Bill Einach, apprenticed under Bill for a couple of years, and got my cheesemaker's license in 1972. In the state of Wisconsin, every vat of cheese has to be presided over by a licensed cheesemaker, and I believe it might be one of the only states that requires this. So I've been licensed since 1972. I worked for Bill for 6 years, and then Julie and I moved to Mineral Point, about 3 miles out of town, and started making cheese for Buck Grove Cooperative. This is the same year we started our own cheese company, Hook's Cheese Company, to make cheese under our label and sell it under our name. We started making in Buck Grove in '76 and started dealing with a small group of farmers in the Mineral Point area. We dealt with the same farms then as we do now. Very small family farms. 50 cows is the biggest herd. At one point, the smallest one we had was 11 cows. That's all this barn would tie, and that's what he milked. But he's since retired. But we still get milk from the same farms. They're down 3 and 4 generations since I started dealing with them 44 years ago. Julie and I took over Buck Grove Co-op in '76, and we were making mainly cheddar cheese for Borden's, and most of that was going into what was called their wedge cut program that was aged for about a year. At that time, most places were only aging cheddar for about a year, year and a half, possibly 2 years. So we made cheese for Borden's for about 4 years, and then we started making for several other companies when we were at Buck Grove. We started making some Colby, Monterey Jack, still making cheddar. And in 1982, we entered 2 blocks of Colby from different vats in the World Championship, sponsored by the Wisconsin Milk, or I'm sorry, it's sponsored by Milk Marketing Board, but it's put on by the Wisconsin Cheesemakers Association. And Julie's entry of Colby won best of class, and then they judge best of class against all best of classes in the entries, and hers won world championship. So in '82, she was the only woman to have won that award, and even up until today, she's the only woman to have won the world championship award. A little bit aside to that, in most places that enter cheeses in these contests these days, like us, we enter it as Team Hook. So the one that won the world championship, Roth Cheese in 2016, probably had some women on the team. From that point, we kind of grew our cheese making and selling Colby, and By 1987, we had outgrown Buck Grove Cooperative. It was a very small facility. And at the same time, the pasteurizer regulations were being upgraded, and the farmers didn't want to spend the money to invest in a new pasteurizer. So the cheese facility in Mineral Point was available for sale. It had been sitting idle for a month or two, and Julie and I purchased that, and under the Hooks Cheese Company Inc. We bought the company, and all of the farmers moved in to selling milk with us. They closed Buck Grove Cooperative, and like I said before, we still get milk from the same small farms, all within 4 miles of the cheese factory. When we bought the facility in Mineral Point, the cold storage was a lot larger than we figured we'd utilize for what we were making, selling as mild cheeses like the Colby, the mild cheddar, Monterey Jack, some baby Swiss. And we decided we'd get into aging some cheddars since nobody else was really doing a lot of that. We thought we'd kind of stretch the limitations and go to maybe 5 years, possibly 7 years. Of course, since that time, we've gone to 7, 10, 12 year, 15 year, and 20 year. In 1994, we started selling our cheese at the Dane County Farmers Market on the Capitol Square in Madison, Wisconsin. And one of our niches was our aged cheddars. But by 1997, we decided we wanted to have another niche, and we started making blue cheese. We started with our original blue, a Danish style blue, made from cow's milk. And in 2001, we added a blue vein cheese, Gorgonzola, an Italian style blue. In 2004, we added a Blue Paradise, a double cream blue, and also a Tilston Point, which is a play on the word Stilton. It's a wash grind blue similar to Stilton. There is a Tilston parish in England, very small, about 400 people, but it is named after Tilston and after Mineral Point, so Tilston Point. Going with the blue line, we added a sheep milk blue in 2009. We'll get to that later. 2011, we added a Barneville blue, a goat milk blue. And in 2013, we added a mixed milk blue. You have to be kidding. But coming back to the cheddars, in 1999, we released our very first batch of our 10-year cheddar. And it was a very big hit. We decided we'd keep aging some of the cheeses, cheddar cheeses we had, and age some to possibly 12 year, 15. We released a 12-year in 2001, and we released our first batch of 15-year-old cheddar in 2009. The first batch of 15 years sold out within a couple days, and luckily we did have another small batch coming up in January of 2010. And then every year since that, we've had one released in October. So typically every October we have a batch of about 2,000 to 2,500 pounds, sometimes a little bit more, of the 15-year age cheddar to release. In 2015, we actually released a batch of 20-year-old, and that was sold out within 6 days. It was pre-booked in February, and most of it was bought by small distributors and specialty stores some restaurants, and then we saved a little bit to sell at the Dane County Farmers Market and our retail store at the factory. The price on the 15-year is usually $55 a pound. The price on the 20-year was $209 a pound. Half of the proceeds of that were donated to help rebuild Babcock Hall, part of the UW-Madison dairy plant. And then we had another batch of 20-year this year in 2020. That was all pre-booked in January, but with what came in March and the release was supposed to be in May, we didn't hold everybody to taking what they had asked for. So we do have a few small pieces of the 20-year left today. When we added our blue cheeses starting in 1997, previous to that, we had always made 40-pound blocks of cheese, and we had originally had stationary presses. When we added the blue cheeses, we were making those in wheels, and people always said that you can't make blue and any other type of cheese in the same plant. You're going to have mold issues with all of the other cheeses. We proved that wrong. We did have a few issues the first year because when we make 40-pound blocks, we were using nylon cutout disposable cheesecloths. We would make blocks of cheese and seal them up like we typically do, and some months down the road we might have some blue specks on some of them, but the bags were still tightly sealed. So we knew something that had touched the cheese had to have caused the mold spores. We decided it had to be the nylon cutout cheesecloths that we'd wash, sanitize, and reuse till they wore out. We decided we'd go with disposable cheesecloths. And so after that point, we had no more issues. That isn't totally green, but it works very well for what we do. So almost all of our other cheeses, we make 60 to 70 varieties, depending on if you count all of the flavors and all of the flavors of cheddar curd that we sell. We make everything else other than the blues in 40-pound blocks. Those are all sealed the same day they're made and then typically put in the cold storage to cure. But with blue cheeses, we'll make those, put them in the put them in the forms, flip the forms, salt them a couple hours after we've dipped them, put them back in the forms. Then we'll take them out, salt them in the morning, the following morning, put them on bread racks, and put them in one of the 4 caves we have for curing. Our facility that was shown a little earlier is built into a large hill. So the back side of the building is actually 16 foot underground. One of the 4 caves, the first cave when we started making blue, was underground. In the wintertime, we had to have no moisture or humidity, and we didn't have to have any cooling on that. But in the summertime, of course, being exposed to the runway, we get some heat, so we had to have a compressor on there to keep that a little cooler. Since that time, we've grown the blue business and a lot of cave-aged cheeses, so we have 4 caves that come down the runway to the make room, all along the wall that are built into that big hill. And cave number 1 and 2 are for curing things like our triple play, our Gouda, our Parmesan, any of the drier cheeses that we keep at higher temperatures, typically cured about 53 to 55 degrees. The blue cheeses are cured, put in cave 3 and cave 4, which are kept more moist, usually about 98% humidity. Temperatures usually about 53 to 55 degrees. very typical of what it would be underground, about 20 feet, so that the blue mold can grow in the blue cheeses. So once we make a vat of blue, depending on what we're making, we'll put it in cave 3 or cave 4. After we've salted it the following morning, put them on bread racks. We'll put a bag over each unit and start curing it at about 53. Within 3 to 4 days, we'll bring it out of the cave and we'll pierce the blues. The blue mold itself has already been added to the milk the same time as the starter culture. So that's one of the reasons we don't have the mold issues. Back 90 or 100 years ago, when they made blue cheese, they would typically drain the whey, add the blue mold as a powder to the curd and mix it in by hand. Well, when you're adding it as powder, you get the blue mold all over the factory. We add the blue mold. It only takes about 6 to 8 ounces of liquid blue mold we get from a culture plant for a 10,000 pound vat of cheese. That 6 ounces of blue mold has about 250 to 300,000 mold spores. That's in the milk, so it isn't exposed to the rest of the factory. Those are dipped, put in the forms, put in the cave. So the only time that the cheeses in the blue mold is really exposed is when it's in cave 3 or cave 4. Most of those are on bread racks. Each bread rack stack is put under a bag to keep moisture within each unit. After it's pierced with a 60 pierce machine on each side, we'll put it back in the cave, let it start bluing up. Typically that will take anywhere from 3 weeks to 4 weeks. We'll bring them back out. We'll cut a wheel in half, make sure it's blue enough. We'll bring it back out on a day we're not making any block cheese and bag those on a loose bag seal and then put them in a tote and put them in the cold storage. So we'll typically cure the blues like our original blue. The label says it's aged over a year. We'll typically cure the original blue over 365 days at about 38 degrees once it's blued up, once we've bagged it. Our Blue Paradise will typically cure it for about 6 months, 6 to 8 months. So it's a little milder. It's a double cream. Tilston Point's a wash rind. We typically leave that in the caves for up to 3 months until the bee linens have grown on the outside and the blue is growing inside. And then we'll actually bag those up. We'll put them in the cold storage and cure those for about a year. The Gorgonzola, the same way, about a year, year and a half. Typically the same with the other 3. The sheep milk blue is a little boy blue. The goat milk blue is a Barneville blue. And the You Have to Be Kidding is a mixed milk blue with all 3. We'll typically age those anywhere from 10 months to a year and a half. We feel that aging our blues out gives it a lot more flavor. They're aged a lot more than anybody else's. Have we got any questions so far?
No, Tony, no questions so far. I was curious, though, about the different sources of milks that you use, being that you're not just using cow's milk, you're also sourcing sheep and goat. So how's that?
So in 2009, we had an event at a small shop in Madison, and I had met Brenda Jensen before, Hidden Springs Creamery up near La Crosse, up by Westby, and they milk quite a few sheep. And I talked to Brenda. She kind of wanted me to make some blue cheese for her, and I said, well, we had been thinking about making some sheep milk blue ourselves. So talked to Brenda and we decided we'd bring a load of milk down and make it into blue cheese, and we'd split the vat. I'd get half and she'd get half, and she would sell hers under her own label and we'd sell ours under our label. That worked the first year or so, and then 2010, Brenda had contacted me and said that she sold a lot of milk to the sheep milk co-op. There was a sheep milk co-op in Wisconsin that sold sheep milk to other factories in the state and out of the state. And they would call her on a given Monday and say, well, we really don't need your milk this week. You've got a small farmstead factory on your farm. You can use your own milk. Well, she had started producing more milk than she could really use with her small vat. So she asked me if we'd start making more sheep milk cheeses. So in 2010, we started adding some more sheep milk cheeses to our lineup. We added Gouda, and we've since added Buttercase and Hurdy and a sheep milk cheddar. And at that time, we also added a mixed milk called Red Arago, which is sort of loosely based on a Colby recipe that we mix sheep milk and cow milk. And when we make the Red Arago with typical Colby, we usually sell it within 3 weeks to 2 months old. You can age Colby maybe to 4 months. Sometimes when you get a little bit past 4 or 5 months with cow milk Colby, you might start showing a little bit of bitterness, not always, but sometimes. But with sheep milk and the cow milk mixed, we were making something that aged very well to a year, year and a half, and still tasted very good. Didn't age like a cheddar, still had kind of a mild flavor, but had very nice sweet flavor from the sheep milk also. So the combination of the sheep and the cow. So we started taking more sheep milk from Brenda, and she added a lot more sheep. She went from 200 sheep to now she's up to about 800 sheep. And typically from January until August, we'll get anywhere from 8,000 pounds of sheep milk to down to about 5,000 pounds every given Monday. She'll use about half, a little less than half of her production during the week, and we'll use the other half. And then typically she was drying up the sheep from August through December and then start freshening again. She makes a lot of spreads with her softer spreads and cheeses like that. And she had customers that wanted cheese at Christmas time when she'd be out. So she started milking a few hundred that would come in August, and then we just told her she can keep that milk, use it herself for the fall. So we typically just get milk for about 8 months. Then we started making some goat milk cheeses. 2011, there was a small farm by Barneveld where I grew up, and we were getting milk from him for a little while, and then he moved and we started getting from a small farm south of Darlington for a little while, and he sold out, and we started getting our goat milk from LeClaire Farms. They've got quite a few goats and they make quite a few cheeses themselves, but they have very good quality goat milk, and they haul down a load about every other week to us. When we're making sheep milk, we'll get goat milk also. So many weeks during the year we started making the UCAF in 2013, the mixed milk with all three. People will ask what percentage of each milk we use. I won't say what percentage, but I will say we do try to keep the goat milk a little bit on the lower side, just because goat milk can be a little overpowering compared to the cow and the sheep milk. In 2014, we added mixed milk with all three called Triple Play, which uses all three milks and uses three different types of starter cultures. that cheese has some flavor notes when it's younger of Havarti, Gouda, Cheddar, and Baby Swiss. As it gets older, the triple play extra innings, the age version, which is usually 14 months to 2 years old, typically gets more of a Gouda flavor to it. So we started using a lot more sheep milk from Brenda, and then we started using goat milk from LeClaire, and started making mixed milk. Of the three milks, production-wise, in a given year, we're probably producing right now about 400,000 pounds of cheese, and about 50,000 pounds of that would be the other milks, sheep and goat, and about 350,000 would be cow milk. Now that's pretty small amount of cheese compared to a lot of the big producers in the country, in the state and the country. Even to ourselves, when we were, what I'll say, running full time before 2001, we had a big 40,000 pound vat, and we were making a lot of Colby, Monterey Jack, Marble Jack, which is kind of a Colby Jack style cheese for other distributors. Most of those cheeses, up until that time, up until 2001, we were selling just a few cents over Chicago Merc price, and 95% or even more of the cheese that we made was sold under other people's labels. We didn't know whose label it was sold under. In late 2001, we decided we were going to, quote unquote, semi-retire and slow down a little bit. We had everything paid off. We had our kids through college, and we decided we'd just cut out all the big distributors and sell everything under our own label. At that point, we were selling to a lot of chefs and specialty stores, and at the Dane County Farmers Market, our own shops. And we thought, this is what we're going to do. Well, of course, with the help of Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin, at that time it was called the Wisconsin Milk Marketing Board, and the Dairy Business Innovation Center, which is part of the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture. They kept pushing small artisan cheeses, and from there we grew to where we're not producing more cheese, but we have a lot more sales dollar-wise and better profit margins. We're doing most of the sales instead of just making the cheese and shipping it out as it is on 60 blocks to a pallet and not knowing who it went to. We started selling it, cutting it down to 8 ounces, 1 pounders, 5 pounders, and shipping out smaller quantities to small artisan distributors that sell to a lot of specialty shops across the nation. So anything that goes out of our plant now has the Hooks label on it. So, we've grown the blue cheeses. They've really come up. That's one of our specialty items. The aged cheddars, our main sales of aged cheddars, we do make white and we do make yellow. Probably 70% of our production on cheddar is a yellow cheddar, an orange cheddar, and about 30% is white cheddar. In the Midwest, most people expect their cheddar to be yellow. It seems like a lot of the West Coast asks for a lot of yellow cheddar. East Coast, they mainly want the white cheddar. Since we have been selling at the Dane County Farmers Market and we're located in Madison, a lot of natural foods people, so a lot of people request something that's white instead of yellow. So we started making more of that and have had more sales on that. Our sales on cheddar typically every vat we make with the same recipe. But of course, every day it's a little bit different. The cows are out on different grasses, or in the wintertime, they're fed different hay depending on when that hay was put up and what quality it was. The milk's going to be a little bit different. So not every vat of cheddar is going to be able to age to 10 or 15 years. But out of our production, about 70% would easily be able to age to 10 years or older. But the main sales are usually from 1 year to 5 year. So about 70% of the cheddars are already sold by the time they are 5 years old. Well, I would like to say, a big thank you to my own dairy farmers, the cow milk farmers, sheep milk farmers, the goat milk farmers. Without excellent quality milk, we believe is even better in Wisconsin. Not that other states don't produce good milk too, but we think that with the great quality milk that our small farms produce, that's what allows us to make great cheese. And for that, we do pay our farmers premium price, a lot higher than most other places pay. That keeps the small family farmer, 50 cows being the biggest, in business, because these days, you know how it goes. The small mom and pop businesses kind of fall by the wayside, and the big Walmarts and Amazons of the world take over. So we got to keep the small ones in business.